Hello, and thanks for tuning in for this episode of the AWS Edge Innovation Spotlight. In this series, we showcase groundbreaking innovation and real-world success stories from our partners to demonstrate the power of edge services in accelerating your business. My name is István Pulai, and I lead the AWS Edge Services partner business across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Today, I'm delighted to be here in our London studio with Chris Clooney from Coralogix. Thanks, Chris, for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, István.
So, Chris, why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about Coralogix and your role?
So I'm responsible for the overall technical go-to-market, and that means building solutions for customers. That means investigating new use cases and ultimately making sure that we have the assets, everything we need to bring the amazing products that we're creating to our customers and prospects. Coralogix is a full-stack observability platform, but our vision is much broader. We believe that the telemetry that exists in many companies today has wide-ranging applications. And while many of our competition are thinking about themselves as something to prevent outages, we are thinking, how can we maximize decision-making? That's our goal, to help companies make better decisions.
Yeah, so that's actually a good point. I guess there are a number of different ways to do observability and provide actionable insights on the cloud like AWS, but obviously Coralogix is very successful. So what do you think are the key factors to that success?
That's a great question. So the most, I think, compelling thing about Coralogix is our model. We allow customers to retain data in their own account, in their own cloud object storage. So for example, in AWS, that would be S3.
Right.
The power of this is that they get all the scalability and retention of S3, effectively, practically infinite retention. But also we allow customers using our data prime engine to query that data directly whenever they like. So we're talking about huge retention and unlimited access. And when you couple in things like data sets that we allow customers to organize their data, we're talking about improving the maturity of the data over time. All of these things help companies to become more effective and more efficient in not just their operational goals with regards to observability, for example, with keeping software efficient and performant, detecting problems, but also asking really interesting questions like, how often is my WAF acting? Does it need to act that often? Did I make the right choice in that moment? Did WAF block the right request? And so on. Asking much more higher tier questions that connect the business insights, those deeply technical metrics that really matter.
Okay, actually, it's a good point. I wanted to ask you about what is the main domain where your customers come from, right? So I know that your platform is used as much on the media services side as on security. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we are across a broad range of industries. We have some really brilliant customers from SoftBet in the gaming industry. We have like TradeWeb in the financial industry, and we have a broad range, every kind of industry one could imagine.
Vertical, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, every vertical. What we do, I think, for those customers that's really great is that we partner with them, which I think is really, really nice. It's not just about providing a really great platform, but about providing a really great service. So when we work with our customers, we talk about the maturity, we look at where they are in terms of their data analytics capabilities, what their teams are doing, how it's all working together, and then we help them define processes within their teams to actually get a little bit better. And what we found is that you can have the best insights in the world, but if you don't have the mature processes to back those insights, then they're limited in what you can do with them. So that's what we bring an awful lot of. It's actually one of my teams that's directly responsible for this, is going into companies and helping them to define the best processes so that the insights have the largest impact and the largest magnitude across the entire organization.
And on the business, I guess. I love how passionate you are about customer stories. And maybe there is one that you're particularly proud of that you want to mention or walk us through?
Definitely. I think there's been a lot of wins, but I would say Happening is probably the biggest one. Really great because they are big users of AWS WAF and CloudFront. They're in the gaming industry, and they had this really interesting problem where they were trying to ingest these enormous AWS WAF logs into their previous provider. The problem they had was that this provider was really struggling with just the volume of these logs, the size of these logs, and the kind of analytics were becoming very limited. That was the first conversation we had with them. And my favorite thing about this whole engagement was that in a single deal, we lowered their overall costs. We improved their analytics because we gave them data prime, which was far in advance of what they had before. We increased their retention. So we're talking about having more data, more access to that data at an overall lower cost. And we were giving them analytics on WAF and CloudFront that they just didn't have before. So it was really, really nice, a really great success story there. And also, really supercharged by what Amazon brings to the table, that, the amount of telemetry these solutions produce means that we have a lot of data to play with and a lot of insights to get. And that's something that's really unique to the Amazon set of products, is the amount of telemetry and the richness of that telemetry as well.
Right. So on that point, you mentioned that you're using AWS services and you help use these services for your customers. But what we like to build here are partnerships where 1+1 is 3, right? So this is what we call our better together stories.
Yeah.
So catchy name, which goes beyond products. And I wanted to pick your brain on what do you think is this plus, this value that we create jointly on top of just the products themselves.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously the products are like the foundation of that interaction. You have to have the features and the capabilities there in order to be able to do the things you need to do. I alluded to it before about the importance of maturity. That's why we go into these companies. That's why we engage with them on a process and team practice level. We have this maturity model, which is 4 levels. And level 1 and 2 are what we describe as generic. So you're getting full data coverage and telemetry coverage. Again, because of the richness of the telemetry that Amazon is producing, we can get there very, very quickly with Amazon users. Level 2 is about understanding how your engineering team is performing, so defining service level objectives, organizing data into data sets so that you know that this data set contains information from WAF, for example, or a specific subset of your WAF data, only the blocks, or only blocks that use this rule, and so on.
Right.
And that allows them to organize and get their data in a sensible structure. Then there's 3 and 4, which is more about how the team functions, with production intelligence and business intelligence, we call it. And again, that's only possible if you have teams that are creating the right processes. So because of Amazon, because of the richness of the telemetry that's produced, we get to 1 to 2 very quickly. What levels 1 and 2 are completed very easily. And because of the richness of the telemetry, we can start to ask very advanced questions.
And the right ones.
Yeah, exactly, the right questions. This is something that we talk about a lot, that mature data makes it easy to ask questions, but mature teams know the right questions to ask. And this is something we try and evangelize in all of our customers. We're doing it across a range of customers now, most of them using Amazon. And to be honest with you, when they are using Amazon, it's so easy because we get that richness of telemetry that makes all the difference.
Right.
And I think that's a big, big thing. And I would also say the final point is that usage of Amazon S3, for a lot of customers, the EU Data Act just went into force a few days ago. And a big component of that is that a customer has transparent access to their data whenever they need it. We store the data in a customer's account, and we can do that with confidence because S3 is so stable. I keep saying this word, but the maturity of the AWS platform means that we can write it to S3 in the customer's account, and we can be confident that it's going to stay there and it's robust and is fault tolerant. So knowing that, the customer gets all that confidence that Amazon brings, and it allows us to provide the analytics without having to worry too much about the long-term storage. That means our R&D teams can focus on just farming insights from our platform. And then, of course, the maturity on top of that means that the teams know what to do with those insights. So Amazon is amazing because it allows us to remove a lot of those low-level concerns and lets us focus on the stuff we're really, really good at as a vendor. And then for the customers, it's brilliant because they get the confidence, they get the low cost. If we were to store the data on their behalf, there would be a markup. Naturally, it's just business. They store it in their own account. There's no markup. So it's the cheapest possible way to store the largest possible volume of data. And the 1+1 is 3 component to that is that with a data prime engine, they can keep querying it over and over again, and they can keep farming insights from that data. It will be difficult to do that in a different cloud provider. We do work with others, but in this particular case, I think Amazon is the scalability of the S3 API, the consistency of the S3 API, and the fact that it's now become a standard, so many other companies just conform to the S3 API because it's the easiest way to do it. It means that the solutions that we've built are very transferable, and for customers, they're very relatable, and they know what to do with them when they see them. So it's great.
Well, I love to hear that. I love to hear how you like S3 and you build layers of intelligence and services on top of them. This leads me to an area which probably is like the next step or evolution. And you are guessing what I'm gonna ask. It's AI, right? So it comes up in every single discussion we have with customers and even inside our teams, how we use this, how can we add the most benefit and advantage for our partners. And I know your technology uses a fair bit of ML and AI.
Yeah.
Can you share what your thoughts on that are and how you use it and what you think is the right way to use AI?
Yeah. So ultimately, the AI hype came in very, very strong, and everybody needed some kind of AI solution. And as this hype cycle begins to come to an end, people start to think about things like, how do I scale this? How do I use this safely? How do I maintain compliance with the regulatory frameworks that are dominant in my industry? So the first major release we did around generative AI, we've actually been using traditional AI for a long time with anomaly-based detection for alerting, for
ML models.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So modeling the customer's data over a week and actually seeing what the normal performance is, and then checking the diff to see, oh, actually, this is anomalous. This shouldn't be happening. This error, because most scalable systems at a certain scale have background errors. It's very, very normal. My favorite conversation is with any developer, and we say, well, that's producing a lot of errors, and they say, oh, that's fine. Ignore that. It's normal.
We know
Yeah.
Bob.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. This is Bob the error. So this kind of tuning out that background noise is extremely important. So we've been doing that for a very long time. We've also been clustering logs for a really long time as well, using machine learning. We actually cluster all the logs together to find the similar ones. And even if a few JSON keys are different, or even if the message in the log body is a bit different, we can handle those ambiguities and still cluster them together.
Right.
And that allows us to show the variables and the constants within a log. We've been doing that for a very, very long time. Obviously, the recent AI explosion has been centered around generative AI. That's probably the most important.
Right.
And what we did in January was we acquired a company called Aporia, which has now become Coralogix AI. And with them, we took a massive step forward. We released the first wave of products was the AI sensor. So when we talk about scaling products and scaling our AI, we think about observability for AI. And the problem of that is, if your chatbot is misbehaving, your traditional observability will not pick it up, because traditional observability is focused on things like latency, error rates, HTTP status codes, for example. All of these things are still relevant, but they're not the scary thing. If your chatbot breaks, that's user impacting, but it's not as scary as your chatbot hallucinating.
Misbehaving.
Right, and there's classic examples across the industry of delivery companies where the delivery company is recommending competition because they apparently don't do it. That's way scarier from a brand perspective. So detecting misbehaviors is very tricky. And the way that we handle that is we ingest all of the interactions and we render them in the AI sensor. The AI sensor gives a high-level view, so which model is costing you the most. What's the token generation rates? Are there any users that are doing any token harvesting, or they're trying to really force high spend on a model? But we can do it at a conversation by conversation level. So we can go into every single conversation and see what was the prompt, what was the response. And then we have an evaluation engine that's made up of a multi-SLM architecture. So we have lots of small language models, and they're all trained to detect certain things. For example, toxicity, SQL injection attacks, prompt injection attacks, context-based hallucinations. And the customer can turn on and off all these different evaluations.
Then you can help them to set up guardrails around this, right?
That is precisely right. We can actually get in the conversation and say, set up a guardrail, so if this kind of response is being generated, don't send it to the user. We can actually stop it from happening. So that's how you scale AI safely. But you also have AI for observability. This is the other side of the equation, which is, well, how do we apply the benefits of artificial intelligence into the observability space? We do this in a number of ways. Natural language querying, so people can generate data param queries using natural language. They can explain a very complex log. We do this with WAF and CloudFront data a lot, actually. So if a WAF...
What does it mean for me?
Yeah, it's like the WAF log is extremely rich. There's the whole chain of rules that were a request was checked against. Then we have the terminating rule, a bunch of different values, and for a more novice user, it can be overwhelming. And we have this explain log button. You hit that, and it will give you a natural language explanation. It will even pull out the key values and say, these are the really important things that matter here. What do we think the impact of this is? So that is the features that are built into the platform. You even have like AI-based documentation in the app. So this is all the stuff that's built into the app. But the really exciting thing I think that's coming is Ollie. So Ollie is our multi-agent co-pilot experience. So rather than it being an AI that's been like baked into the Coralogix platform, it's a totally standalone app. What you do is it trains itself on your data. So it's not ephemeral in a sort of ChatGPT style where you just ask questions and it actually goes and like synchronizes itself with your data. You can ask it questions at a very, very high level, and it will go and read that data, and it will render remarkable insights. And actually behind the scenes, it's detecting which agent is most appropriate for this question. The agents all collaborate together, and you end up with this really nice experience. We're actually going into a closed beta with Ollie right now as we speak. And this is going to be a huge, huge thing. The big difference is that it's AI native observability. So rather than it being like a wrapper around Coralogix is a totally different way to access your telemetry. And remember, the telemetry is held in your cloud object storage,
Right.
which is really nice because it means that it's your data. We're not taking it, we're not hiding it anywhere. It's still yours. You're just getting the most out of it using the Ollie system, which is super exciting. So that's coming over the next few months is when we're going to go into a general release.
Well, we will watch what's coming out over the pipeline. Definitely, that sounds super exciting. Now, I wanted to ask you about what you think is top of mind for your customers. Right? You said you work in across many different industries and verticals, so probably you are picking up some signals from every corner of this industry as to what they are expecting from an observability product.
Yeah, I think I'll begin. I made this point a few times, but I think it comes up a lot. People are becoming increasingly concerned about the provenance of their data, because they know how valuable it is. Like in the AI, as AI becomes more and more common, data is a differentiator. You actually, the quality of the training data that you can bring to the models is the thing that will change how users experience whatever AI layer you have. So they want to keep their data, and it's been very fortunate for us because we built this architecture before the generative AI boom happened.
Right.
So this is ready to go. So that's one big thing is provenance and ownership of data, without the vendor locking component of hiding it away, or we store it in Parquet in customer
Or
product
reusing
models.
it for something else.
Right, they could put it into AWS Glue, for example, and start doing big data sampling. Like, that's their
Right.
business. We have customers that do that with AWS Athena. So there's lots and lots of things they can do there. Another one, and we talk about this a lot actually, people talk about the cost of observability a lot. And what we're finding with a lot of customers is it's not necessarily the cost, it's the value. So in their minds, observability is expensive, but they're happy to spend the money if they get the benefit.
If they understand what they are spending it on. Right?
Precisely, yeah. And what we're finding a lot is that a lot of customers they start by saying it's way too expensive. Or they come to us and they say, what I'm using today is way too expensive. What that actually translates into is, I am not seeing the value for this expense. And we kind of, it's a really interesting conversation to have, because what we say to people is, yes, just 20% of your cloud bill is being spent on observability right now. And if you look at it as purely a tool that just stops bad things from happening, I can sort of see how that might be frustrating. But if you look at it as an engine for pulling insights out of your data and having them impact the business. So to give you a really great example, we're working with a lot of vendors right now on ad intelligence. This is one of the extensions that we built into Coralogix, which is like a prepackaged collection of dashboards and alerts. Ad intelligence is my favorite use case. We're using Media Tailor, Media Connect, Media Live, Media Package,
Right.
the whole elemental stack. My favorite thing about this is that every single time somebody goes in and works out why they missed an ad slot, for example,
In an auction.
yeah, in an auction, or if there's a live stream happening
Right.
and there's an ad slot, and they have to make sure that a personalized ad makes it to the customer. Every time they work out what went wrong there and they fix it, they're improving revenue. There's like a much closer relationship. It's not about things going wrong. It's about the continuous improvement necessary to keep making yourself more competitive, keep yourself lean, keep yourself working really, really well. That is my favorite use case at the moment because it's so close to the business. So if you say to somebody, you're paying 20% of your cloud bill to stop things from going wrong, I can sort of see the frustration. You're paying 20% of your cloud bill, but you're getting improved ads every single week on week. Every time someone looks at the dashboards, they find a new way to make more money for the company. You're asking complex questions around like FinOps questions. How do I reduce
Right.
my cloud bill? Ollie really unlocks this. This is I think the most interesting thing is that you can ask how do I reduce my cloud bill? Which servers are costing me the most money? Which apps are misusing resources the most? To ask FinOps questions. And suddenly that 20% looks very, very attractive. That's a steal for what you get. So
Exactly.
this is our whole thing.
It's a revenue model.
Right. It's helping companies make better decisions. That's our whole mission as a company. We really want that to happen. So this is a big thing that's top of mind for a lot of customers, is they're moving out of the space of observability being just a tool that's for devs to solve like outages and things like
Right.
that. And it's more about a business-wide layer of intelligence because it has such rich telemetry and there's so much to do with it.
And is Ollie your answer to this, or are you cooking up something else?
It's one of many. It's one of
One of
many.
many.
Ollie, the beauty of Ollie is that because of the approach we've taken, training on the data, not just an ephemeral model,
Right.
just you can ask any random questions to. Because of this AI native observability user experience, it's not a clutter of different things on the screen. It's a very clean single text box, ask questions. It makes it accessible for everybody.
Right.
If you're a dev, you can use it very, very quickly. If you're a product person, you're trying to understand how software is being used, you can use it. Graphic designer, and you want to know about real user monitoring data that we have. How often does this HTML element fail and not render. You're a marketing person. What's the bounce rate on this page? You can ask it anything. That's such a powerful answer. But I keep saying the reason why we decided to make them two separate stacks as AI native observability and classic traditional observability is, to some degree, you're going to need both. You're going to need the ability to ask these really high-level questions and short-circuit what would have been a very long traditional process of going between dashboards and querying and things. But at some point, I think as an engineer, I'm always going to want to jump into it. And this jumping off point into the platform is really exciting as well. So we're still working extremely hard in the classic observability because we want to make sure that is as cutting edge and as fantastic as possible. And the teams are working so hard to make these features really, really great for engineers, for users, for everybody. But Ollie is, to me, a supercharger. It's a thing that really accelerates that investigation process, or indeed that continuous improvement process.
So since this is a series about edge services, AWS Edge services, I wanted to ask you about that. It does look like it's, in your case, it's less about how you use our edge stack. It's more about how you complement our edge stack and how you help our customers use edge services and get valuable industry level insights into those, right?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the telemetry that comes from Amazon is extremely rich. And that's how we complement it. We're beginning with this telemetry. So to give you an idea, MediaTailor, for example, just as one single component of the Elemental stack, we built an entire extension. An extension in Coralogix is a collection of dashboards, predefined alarms, parsing rules, metric generation, and a bunch of data analytics that allow people to get value immediately in a single click. Just deploy it into.
And you have that for CloudFront and VEF, I understand.
Correct,
right?
yeah, as well. But the example with MediaTailor, just to give you an idea, is this is one service, and it's producing insights on the ad decision server response time, on transcoding performance, on how often ad markers are being found, on errors from the ADS, from these various different places, that we can get a really clear picture of overall ad insertion success from both a business perspective and also from a technical perspective with the same telemetry. Such richness of that data is how we complement Amazon just in this case. And in the WAF and CloudFront component, we have a full Edge Insights extension that will it correlates the WAF behavior with the CloudFront data together. So for example, if we see a large spike in CloudFront data followed by a WAF block, then we can get some idea about what those two events were doing. We have a concept called a flow alerts, which is stateful alerting across days even. And you could say, for example, if a slower attack starts to happen, we can track multiple different events and tie them together and say, hey, on their own, none of these things are particularly scary, but in a single flow, we realize that there's potentially a very, very large impact here. All of that is unlocked by the logs, the metrics that are being produced by CloudFront, by WAF, by the Elemental stack. And these are all extensions pre-built in the Coralogix platforms. Every time we learn something new, it's there ready to go in a single click for a Coralogix customer.
Wow, Chris, thank you very much for sharing all these insights. I think we could do this for another hour or two to exchange ideas about that. Unfortunately, this is a wrap for today in this episode. Thanks for coming and being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And for our viewers, this is today's episode of the AWS Edge Innovation Spotlight. If you are interested in similar success stories and innovation use cases, please check the other episodes of this series, and please reach out to connect. Thank you.